We're joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline by our friend Sam McKewon from the Omaha World Herald. Sam, how are you this morning?
I'm really good. How are you guys?
Good, Sam. How are things? What are we working on this morning?
We just update our NET rankings every Monday. So that'll be up here in about 10, 15 minutes. It's popular. People really want to know where all the teams are. And we do Creighton and Nebraska and UNO. So, it was a good basketball week. Around here.
For the most part, Creighton shouldn't fall too far, right?
No, they moved up in the NET rankings.
Yep.
In the AP rankings and the coaches rankings, I think they'll probably stay right where they are, because if you look at what happened last week in men's college basketball, a lot of teams lost. I mean, it's just late in the year. A lot of teams, you have desperate teams on the bubble. They're playing their butts off. And you have teams that are already in the tournament that just had a big win. And so there was a bunch of losses and wins last week. I don't think Creighton's going to move much.
Right around, 10-11, 10-9?
Well, in the NET, they're 11. In the AP, they're 15. I think they'll stay around there.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Sam, speaking of Creighton, DB and I kind of had this conversation earlier this morning about what we thought happened in terms of just, hey, they didn't play well enough. St. John's just played well, whether or not letdown games exist.
I had to give him a stern talking to, Sam.
And I'm a stubborn listener, so we'll I don't know how much.
What was the
because I didn't buy the letdown thing, and I think you're letting a good team off the hook, and I think Coach Mack preached about the letdown. I think everybody talked about the letdown. I think you could look at the line and see letdown. Like, if that snuck up on them, that was on Creighton. They just got to own that. There was no letdown. That was my exact delivery.
Yeah, I mean, I think St. John's played really well.
100%.
You got to play at Madison Square Garden. That's not easy. And I mean, St. John's is playing desperate. And then they match up well with Creighton. They are Creighton's kryptonite. They're the team that now there are other teams in the NCAA tournament that Creighton does not want to face that are similar to St. John's. I don't know exactly who all those teams are, but you kind of know once you get there. The teams that change you. San Diego State, although again they went to the national championship game last year, so they were very good.
Mm-hmm.
But that team, that style, the way they play, that's not a good fit for Creighton. Creighton struggles with that. Villanova. Now they go to Villanova, I think, at the end of the year. That's an upset alert, because Villanova's style hurts teams like Creighton and then drags bad teams into games too.
They shoot so many.
Have to watch that.
Everybody says that about Villanova. I don't. They shoot so many threes. Like, if you would have told me, they're mid-range, or they like, ball screens or two-man games. Like, I get Dixon being a tough matchup, but I don't love this year's version of Villanova against Creighton. And just my opinion at first blush, because they dial it from distance so much.
Well, it's that the guy that makes their threes, or a lot of them, draws Kalkbrenner away from the rim.
Yeah.
And so that's challenging, because they either have to decide to.
And he does play well against Creighton.
Mm-hmm.
He played great against Creighton. He played incredible last year. And then he played really well in the first game this year. So you have to decide who you're going to use to guard him. And if it's Kalkbrenner, then that changes the whole, their whole defensive structure. St. John's is a hard team for Creighton to play. Marquette's hard, and
that's
weekend, and they're really athletic. And now, in my opinion, this is just my opinion. You get to the NCAA tournament, I'll take Creighton over Marquette, because some of the things that Creighton does are hard to stop in a short turnaround situation. Creighton can play fast. They can go on big runs in an NCAA tournament. If a team can go on a big run, there's just a clock inside your head that's like, all right, we only got 12 minutes left in our season. It creates a kind of pressing. So I like Creighton in the NCAA tournament. So long as they get a good draw, I think they have a great chance to get exactly where they were last year, and then it comes down to executing in the Elite Eight. I think Creighton's in a great spot.
I'm I'm calling my shot. Creighton will be beating Marquette on March 2nd.
Will or won't?
Will.
All right. We'll take. Listen,
And I know it's a tough matchup with Oduro and Kolick in the 2-man game, and then Jones is the human bucket, but they'll beat Marquette Saturday. It's a desperate Seton Hall team you probably got to worry about. That's a sleepy one. You want to talk about bad catchphrases for sports? The classic look ahead. The classic look ahead game. A desperate Seton Hall team travels to Omaha and before they play. I mean, all the narratives are there, but here's the deal with the Big East. Anytime you lace them up, if you're not playing Georgetown or DePaul, you better buckle up, period. And I think the good teams like Creighton know that. That's just my opinion.
They do. They absolutely know it, for sure.
Let's go to Lincoln.
Sam, let's switch gears to Nebraska basketball here. Obviously got the big win against Minnesota yesterday in convincing fashion, kind of put to bed the road narrative against Indiana earlier in the week. How, I guess, when you look at the, Tominaga wasn't really going yesterday, Rink Mass wasn't really going yesterday. Like, is there any part of you that's surprised that Nebraska has found ways to be good offensively when a couple of guys that we thought were non-negotiables for them weren't really there?
Well, I mean, I don't know that you expect Juwan Gary to shoot like that from three, but Bryce Williams has been a good addition, and I think as we went into the
really good
the off season. So I mean, Wilson covers the team now, but I had to kind of pitch in there for about 6 months. So I spent a lot of time looking into the transfers, right? The guys that they had added. And, I think we had spent a lot of time thinking about Rink Mass because of who he was replacing, and Derek Walker was the best player on last year's team. Bryce Williams didn't really have a direct comp the last year. I guess it was Vandemel, but they're kind of different players, and I think Bryce has just been really good. I mean, the one thing that I appreciate most about Bryce is that I don't think coming into the season we thought he was going to be the guy that's like, all right, clear out, I'm going to go to the rim, and he's become that guy, and that's been a big part of. He's the alpha. He's willing to go out to the top of the key and make something happen with 9 seconds on the shot clock. And I'm not saying he's Trey Alexander in that regard, but he's good and he's been effective. And so I think he's been I don't know if pleasant surprise is the right word, but his game is broader than we thought it was going to be. And then Fred Hoiberg made a tweak with Jamarcus Lawrence, and it has worked. You got two guys from the same high school coming off the bench at the exact same time, and it seems to work. Now, they don't always go off at the same time. C.J. Wilcher did not play well yesterday, but Jamarcus Lawrence has really enjoyed that role. I'm not sure why, but it suited him, and that may be the role that he has for the next 2 years. In my opinion, they need to go get a point, a true point. Bryce has sort of evolved into that, but they need to go out and get another guy that's like Sam or Bryce or whomever, and let Jamarcus just be a two guard and come off the bench and do what he does. But those are the things that I think have helped them immensely. And then they've been pretty consistent here in the last 2 weeks on defense. And just imagine how good they'd be on defense if Blake Keto were healthy, because he might be their best defender. And he just hasn't been healthy all year. So, this is the best they've been in a while, and Fred Hoiberg deserves quite a bit of credit. He won't take it. He deflects a lot, but he deserves a lot of credit for how this program has kind of pulled itself off the campus.
Yeah, and I was saying this. So this is like across the board. You were talking about Lawrence and Wilcher, and you have to know your personnel before the culture has to be in place before you pull that trigger, right? You have to know that the culture can sustain if CJ Wilcher doesn't respond well to coming off the bench or being a situational offensive guy, or Jamarcus Lawrence is going to you're trusting that the culture is going to buoy that if it doesn't go as planned, right? You got to have the stones to pull the trigger, but you have to be able to support the outcome too if it's not good. Conversely, or not conversely, but in the same vein, he said a lot of things publicly all year about being very specific with guys, which you also can't and typically don't do without knowing the pulse of your team. Don't you think, and you're right dab smack in the middle of it, haven't we undersold this whole knowing it, the chemistry, building the chemistry, kind of resetting the culture that Hoiberg has done the last year and a half?
Yeah, I mean, I think he always had that, quality within him. I think
that was the conversation this morning Ravi and I had to start the show. Was it always in there and it was just an Abdelmassih thing, or is this new?
I mean, I think it was always in there, and Matt Abdelmassih takes a lot of shots, and some of those I suppose are reasonable. Some are maybe a little. I'll just say this: the COVID year was really tough on the program, and nobody likes hearing that. That was the other time I had to pinch it, covering it, and it was hard. It was not easy. They missed an entire month of basketball. Then when they came back, they played like 13 games in 20 some days, and it was just a tough experience for the program. And they thought they were going to be pretty good. Maybe not this good, but I think they thought, well, maybe we can make the NIT, or I don't even know if they had the NIT in the COVID year. I'm talking 2020, 2021.
Mm-hmm.
But they thought they were going to be better than that. And then COVID just sort of, canceled an entire month of basketball. That was a very strange experience. And I don't think it was easy on Fred. I don't think it was easy on the staff. And then I think they came back. And again, I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm trying to just lay it out. They thought Delano Bant was going to return, and he got drafted. And he stayed in the draft, and it changed the entire nature of that team. They had built the entire team for Delano Bant to return and be the point guard. Then he leaves, and then they sign a point guard that really didn't figure it out until like 3 weeks left in the season. So that's part of what happened. And, and then I think, and it was after that the change kind of kicked in. Bryce McGowan was a good guy and had a good season here, but I don't think that was the fit, because I think there was a lot of like, well, we got to get Bryce's points. Like, there were whole possessions of games, whole stretches of games where they just throw the ball to Bryce and he would isolate, and it was time for Bryce to score. And that's not really Fred. I think that's not who he is. I think he either wants a post guy to be a distributor or the point guard to be the distributor, but he doesn't want a wing to just stand out there and dribble around and shoot. And so I think that's when they started to change. They figured it out with Derek Walker. The offense got better. They focused more on defense. They got Juwan Gary. All those things matter. But people will notice, even though they didn't shoot very well yesterday, they scored 73 points. And like, they're pretty good on offense. And I think that actually matters. I think the way that they score and the distribution and the balance of that, I know it's not a program that's like it's not Creighton on offense, but they're scoring 77 points a game. And that's the most they've scored in a really, really long time. So the defensive focus matters, but I'm just telling you, the offensive stuff is important too. And I think they score enough points that it helps their defense. Their defense is willing to play. I don't even know the last time they scored 77 points a game, guy. I don't know. I think it was like the 90s.
Probably the last time that they had a 45-point half. I mean,
I'm looking right now. I'm going back to stat reference. The last time that Nebraska scored 77 points a game was in the NIT championship season of 95-96. They scored 80 points a game that year. Yeah, and that team had Eric Strickland, Jerron Boone, Bernard Garner, Mikey Moore, and Teron Lou. That team was great. I mean, can you imagine how many points they would score today with all the? I mean, good God.
Hey,
So,
this is great.
So anyway,
it's almost like you caught yourself off guard, and it was like, oh God, this is awesome.
really
I have a hunch. I think I'm going to validate myself.
It's unbelievable. It's been literally almost 30 years since they've scored 77 points a game. Now, people don't talk much about their offense, but their offense is actually pretty good, and that's what Fred's really good at. And they've found a way to score points, and it affects their defense. Their defense, I think, is better because they're actually pretty darn good on offense.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World Herald. Sam, is something that I think gets overlooked, and I don't know if you've thought about it much, but how much more impressive is it that, you mentioned the not having a true point guard. They thought they had a true point guard, right? They thought they had they have Ulis, but he can't play, obviously. Like, how much more impressive is what they've been able to accomplish, considering, you mentioned when they thought they had Banton coming back the next year and then he was gone. This was even kind of a more bizarre situation than that, where they thought they had their point guard. He's obviously not able to play, and they were still able to adjust and be, the best offensive team Nebraska's had in 30 years.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think that's a testament to their understanding of the system. A lot of these guys are old. Bryce Williams is smart, so he was able to come in and kind of pick it up right away. It speaks to just how well they understand what they're doing. And if you, again, Sam Hoiberg did not make shots yesterday. There's a lot of things but if you watch Sam and like his understanding of what he's supposed to do when he has the ball, and like when he's supposed to peel back out, and when the dribble drive is cut off, and where he goes and where he passes, if you just watch him for a whole game, I think you can see like the genius of Fred's system, because Sam really understands it. It's obvious that he understands it. And the things that he gets to and the passes that he makes, and some of the passes that, like CJ Welcher understands it really well now in year 3. Some of the things that these guys do, it's pretty cool. Hoiberg is the thing he's really good at is creating sets and creating a system, not just sets, but a system where if you know what you're doing, it's hard to stop you. And the cool thing is they're going to be very, very similar next year. This is going to be a team that Bryce can come back, Rink can come back. The only guys that are gone are Josiah and Casey for sure, and Jerron Coleman. He's gone. And then Ulis will be there. I expect him to play.
I move on from Ulis. Go get my man Chucky Hepburn. Bring Chucky home. That's my answer.
Well, I think there was probably an opportunity to have conceived that.
I don't.
Make the NCAA tournament.
I get it. I think this may be the year to make the run. Add him if you're going to do it. Okay. I'm just putting that out there. But let me say,
I've seen. It's clear that he's capable of more than that offense allows him to be, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Doesn't always look overjoyed, does he? I'm just saying. Hey, so Sam, how about this though? Like, we're talking about tinkering and offense versus defense and all that other stuff. How about how he's somehow they figured out with Alec and Gary playing at the same time, and him staying with Alec is kind of the pulse of their heartbeat. And he almost, I won't say never gets talked about, because I think that's sometimes hyperbole for media when they want to get credit for saying a guy's name, but he does get a little love. But the ability to play those two guys and not really skip a beat on offense is, I think that's pretty underappreciated, because that lineup gets stops.
Oh yeah, it sure does. Yeah, Josiah gets a lot of mentions from the writers, because he's a great quote, and so for sure he gets a lot of run in print, and I'm glad for that. I think he's kind of one of the leaders of the team. He just plays so hard, and yesterday he played really hard. I think when their coach Johnson was, and I like him a lot.
I do too. I like Ben. He's a good coach.
He is. And so when he was talking about a team possessed, I certainly thought of Alec and how hard he was playing. And, he's so willing to get on the floor. He's just kind of willing to do anything and everything he can. And he doesn't really care if he scores. I think he loves just doing all the gritty stuff. And he's been what they hoped he would be.
Well, he started 2 of the breaks from the ground, from the floor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yesterday was not a pretty game, but it was gritty, and it was kind of, who they want to be as a program. And again, they won by 18. It was they really, I don't know what's going on with Minnesota that, Joseph didn't play until the end. I haven't paid enough attention to what they're doing there, but, there's certainly things about Nebraska that we haven't seen this kind of program in a while. We just haven't. And people can talk about the Tim Miles team from 10 years ago, and that's fine. But that team couldn't score to save its life, and this one can't.
This team would beat that team, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, there's things about this team. We just haven't seen this in a while, and appreciate it, and appreciate it again next year, because I think a lot of it will come back. I think, NIL will kick in, and a lot of these guys will be like, yeah, let's just do this one more time and see what happens, because I think it's a team that could be even better next year.
The curious case of Dawson Garcia continues.
Yeah, Sam, it's kind of interesting you brought up the roster retention, because Nebraska's got a lot of good players, but not a lot of these guys are looking at NBA careers, right? So there's going to be an opportunity to get, most of these guys back.
Almost all of them. Yep. I think there may be players who choose to transfer out because it's evident they're not going to play.
Yeah,
sure.
But I would anticipate almost all of those players returning for another year. As I look at the roster, I don't know about Blaze Keita. He's been hurt a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I know they know what he can do if he's healthy, but he hasn't been healthy all year, and he's not going to play. Obviously he's just taking a redshirt year. And then there's a couple other players that are maybe down the bench, but I think all of these players are going to return. Gives you an opportunity to redshirt Frager, which I assume they were imagining they were going to do anyway. So all those things are good, and they're going to be a really good team next year. Everybody coming back, a lot of people coming back. So it's fun. This is just the beginning of what I think could be a 2 or 3 year run for this program. And if they get to the NCAA tournament, and let's say they win a game, how much more attractive is Nebraska basketball going to be in the transfer portal? Very attractive. And
it's got all the other stuff going for it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's a heck of a place to play basketball.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha World Herald. Sam, we appreciate your time as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Take care.
Thanks, Sam.
That is Sam McKewon. Coming up next, we've got a bunch of stuff to clean up in the Warhorse Sportsbook Sports Cleanup. Coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll have more coming up next.